And her best-selling novel, People Like Us, is currently being developed into a series in Israel. A stage adaptation of The House Arrest is now playing at Beit Lesin Theater in Tel Aviv. So some of you who may have already read some of her books. I think after this evening, others of you will be inspired to read some of her books and look forward to future work that she will do. So welcome. We're really thrilled to have you. Please give a hand to Noa. I think you have to hold both of these. Okay. Oh, you have, so just this one. Okay.
Just use this?
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for coming. We are few but exquisite. I think by watching the first episode of Stockholm, the television series that was made based on the novel, we'll watch the first episode and then I'll talk a little bit about writing a novel and writing a television series, the differences, and of course you're very, very welcome to ask whatever you want and I'll answer as best as I can. So let's watch. Okay, hi everyone again. Should I talk from here or from there? What's more here? Perfect. So this was the first episode. I have something, is this the microphone? Can someone help me with that? Oh, it's supposed to be in the pocket? Okay, it's supposed to be in my pocket, okay, sorry. Hi everyone again. So this was the first episode, and I want to tell you a little bit about the novel, and then about adapting it into this television series, and we're going to watch one more clip from the series later on. So Stockholm, as you already figured out, tells the story of 5 friends, 3 men and 2 women who have been friends for the past 50 years, some of them even longer. And 4 of them are alive and 1 is dead. And the 4 ones who are alive are conspiring to conceal the death of their 5th friend in order to allow him to win the Nobel Prize for economics. As you now know, you have to be alive at the time of the announcement. I know there are many people here from academia, so this may be relevant information for you all. You have to be alive at the time of the announcement, but you're very free to die between the announcement and the ceremony. There are 2 months there, and you can die there as much as you want and still get the award, or someone else would get it for you. But you have to be alive at the time of the announcement. They think to themselves, well, how difficult could it be to answer a few text messages on someone's behalf? As it turns out, it is much more difficult than they expected. First of all, because things tend to be much more difficult than we expect. Life tends to be more complicated than we anticipated. And second, because if things didn't get complicated, then there wouldn't be a novel and there wouldn't be a television series, and we're going to watch one such complication later on. So this is the story, and I was asked a lot, where did this idea come from? This is not an autobiography, I can tell you right away. I myself have never hid a dead body, not for more than 3 or 4 days. So where did the idea come from? I want to say something in general about ideas for novels. You know, I travel a lot, and I think that the reaction that I get the most when I tell people what I do for a living, when I tell them that I'm a writer, is people telling me, oh, you're a writer, you know, I have so many great ideas for novels. And whenever I hear that, I immediately get filled with jealousy. Because I don't have many ideas for novels. I don't have many good ideas for novels. I have very few ideas for novels, and most of them are very bad. And then I have to remind myself of something that I know, and that is that having ideas for novels that you don't actually have to sit down and write is much easier than having ideas for novels that you actually do have to sit down and write. And surprisingly, maybe surprisingly, I think that ideas for novels are much like dating. I know this sounds like somewhat strange, but I'm going to explain. I don't know how many of you are dating or still dating, but I'm sure all of you know what dating is or have dated at a certain point. I haven't been dating for many years, thank God, but when I used to date, there were quite a few men that I would have a cup of coffee with, right? Half an hour, you know, an hour tops, what's the damage? There were much fewer men that I would spend 3 months with, and there were much fewer men that I would spend the rest of my life with. That's obvious, right? Ideas for novels are the exact same thing. There are many nice ideas, there are many cute ideas that I would gladly have a cup of coffee with. But in order for me to choose an idea and to decide that this idea is novel worthy, I have to ask myself, okay, well, this idea is nice, but do I actually want to go to sleep with this idea's face every night for the next couple of years? And do I really want to wake up to this idea's face every morning for the next couple of years? Most ideas, as most men, don't make that cut. So where did the idea for Stockholm did come from? A few years ago, I was sitting for lunch with a very good friend of mine. And the friend was kind of upset. And I asked what happened, and she told me that she went over to visit another friend of hers. This is going to be one of those stories. A friend of mine, her husband, her friend, so you have to stay focused, okay? So my friend went to visit another friend of hers. And this friend is married to a very, very successful film director, Israeli film director. And when my friend was over at their house, she saw on the screensaver, on the computer screensaver, a picture of the friend and her husband walking the red carpet, the Hollywood red carpet. And my friend told me that she went back home to her four little children, and she told me that in her entire life, she has never felt more lame, dull, unglamorous as she did when she saw them walking red carpets and her, you know, with the diapers and the breastfeeding and all of that. And I listened to her, and with one half of my brain, I started consoling her. And I told her that she's very glamorous in her own way, and that she's going to get even more glamorous as time goes by, especially if she stops having children at a certain point. And but with the other half of my mind, this is, by the way, one of many reasons why you shouldn't befriend authors. They always give you only half their brain, and the other half is always conspiring and sometimes stealing from you as you engage in a conversation. So with the other half of my mind, I started thinking that there must be some kind of a novel hiding here. And the reason for that is people always talk about what's it like to be a friend in a time of need, right? This is a very nice subject to talk about, how we are good friends, and a friend in need is a friend indeed, and it's very noble, etc., etc., etc. But the one thing no one never talks about is what it's like to be a friend in a time of success. This is nothing that no one talks about. And the reason why no one talks about it is because it's very obvious as well. Because there is absolutely nothing you can say other than, I am happy for my friend, period, end of conversation. Although you may have other feelings as well. You may be a little envy, you may, your friend's success may make you examine your own life, the things that you have done, the things that you failed to do. These are all things that don't make you a horrible human being. These are all things that just make you a human being. That's it. It just means that we're human. And whenever I detect something that I think that everyone must think and must feel, because it can't be that I'm the most horrible person in the universe. I don't think so. Maybe I'm the second most horrible, but I don't think I'm the worst person that ever existed. So whenever I think I find something that I think that everyone thinks of, but no one talks about, I know there's a novel there. And then I went home and I started thinking, well, okay, so my novel is going to be about success, about friendship and success. But what kind of a success is it going to be? What is success in the Western world? And then I thought, well, I think it's the Oscars and the Nobel Prize. These are I would say, the most obvious symbols of success in the Western world, and the Nobel more than the Oscars. Because the Oscars, we all watch movies, we all have our opinion, this one should have won, this one shouldn't have won, but the Nobel Prize, we have some opinions when Bob Dylan gets the Nobel Prize, maybe. But when a friend tells you, yeah, I got the Nobel Prize for cracking the chromosome, you don't go, I could have cracked that chromosome, just as well. No, you don't. The Nobel Prize is more or less God or whoever you believe in, comes from the sky, it goes down, he says, this is him, and there's no arguing after that. So I thought that the Nobel Prize is an interesting subject to write about, also because the Nobel Prize is usually granted when someone is not very young. There were cases when people won it when they were 25, but it's not very common. And I thought it's a very interesting age, your 60s, your 70s, an age where people still have time to change their lives. They can still make changes, but they don't have all the time in the world, or more exactly, they don't have the illusion of having all the time in the world, which is the illusion we usually have when we're young. So this is where the idea came from. And I had the idea, but before I could even write one single word, I had to do something that I call building the characters. Building the characters is my favorite part of writing prose. Building a character is something that I do in a file that is completely separate from the file where I later write my book. This is a file that is actually like my studio, like my private studio. This is where I manufacture my characters, and when they're ready, I take them and I put them in the book file. I call this file the characters, because I don't like to waste inspiration in unnecessary places. By the way, later on, when I write my book, I call the file the book. And my mother once told me, this is a completely unliterary story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. My mother once told me that I'm doing a big mistake by calling the book file the book. Because if people broke into my house, they would know how to get exactly to the right file. And then I thought to myself that this must be the definition of the purest definition of mother's love, that there is something out there in the universe that actually believes that the motivation of Israeli criminals is to lay their hands on her daughter's unfinished manuscript. This is what deteriorated them into a crime. But for now, we're not in the book yet, we're in the characters. So what does building the characters mean? I should say that for me, there is absolutely no difference between us. We're here, we're actually human beings, right? We're flesh and blood. We have our hopes, our dreams, our disappointments, our diseases, our jobs, our everything, right? Our secrets, everything that makes us human. There's no arguing about that. I think there is absolutely no difference between us, actual human beings, and literary characters. I think that literary characters are exactly the same way. They have everything that makes us human. They have it too. They have secrets, they have desires, they have friends, they have families, they're cheating, they're loving, everything. And the reason I know that there is absolutely no difference, there is one difference that I can accept. By the way, there is one difference. The one difference is that we were lucky enough or unlucky enough, it depends on your perspective, to be born in the real world, right? Yeah, that's kind of a fact. While literary characters were lucky enough or unlucky enough to be born in a book. It also depends on the book. And if you think about it, if it's a good book, they were usually unlucky. It's not a problem to be born in a bad book, because in a bad book there's usually a good ending and everything turns out fine. But in a good book you don't want to be a character. But other than that, we're exactly the same way. And the reason I know that there is absolutely no difference between us and literary characters is that if there was a difference, then it wouldn't interest us to read about these characters. I think that the reason that we read is in order to find a piece of our soul hidden in a character. We're reading in order to find company to our many flaws. We're reading in order to find out that we're not the only flawed people in the universe, that we're part of a huge crowd of flawed people. And I think that when we read, if it's not well-made characters, if it's plastic characters that were made in China and imported into the book, then we wouldn't have that feeling. We wouldn't identify with the characters. It wouldn't teach us anything about the human condition. It wouldn't teach us anything about ourselves. So these characters have to be as human and as complicated as us. So how do you do that? The thing that I do is I try and build a biography to each and every character in my novel. If I take, for example, I'll take Neely. Neely is the retired doctor who is very actively dating now. She's recently divorced. She's a retired pediatrician. She hated both her work and her marriage, and she's very happy she got rid of both. And if I take her, for example, when the book starts, she's 66, but she wasn't born 66. I know that because no one is born 66. And that means that in order to understand who she is, who is that person that is about to star in my novel, I have to understand what happened to her and what she went through during the 66 years prior to her getting to my book. Who were her parents? What kind of a childhood did she have? What kind of a relationship did she have with her family, with her friends, with her lovers, with her husband, with her children, etc., etc., etc. The more I know about a character, the more authentic the character will eventually be. I can tell this is my favorite subject in the entire world, building characters. But I wanted to have some time to talk about adapting the novel as well. I want to show another clip from the television series, and this one requires the background or the context. It's a few days into their ordeal, they find out that the deceased sister is about to come visit. It appears that she spends one night a week at his house. She has a healing class on Sunday mornings, so she has to sleep in Tel Aviv. And they know that she's about to arrive, so they have to move the body from the deceased's house to one of the friends' houses. And this is what happens.
תפגע ותברח כמו בן אדם נורמלי. אני הרגתי אותו, הוא מת. אדוני, סליחה. מה פתאום? אבל הוא לא נושם, סליחה, אדוני. אבישי. גם אנשים בני 70 משתכרים לפעמים. איך קוראים לך? באסם. הוא לא זז, אני בטח שהוא חי, סליחה, אדוני. אדוני, סליחה. יותר חי מזה כמו לי. משהו לא בסדר, אני אומר לכם, צריך להזמין לו אמבולנס. הוא בסדר. סליחה, אני רופאה, אני ראיתי אתכם מהאוטו ועצרתי. מה קרה לו? הוא סתם, הוא משתכר, הוא קצת שיכור, אנחנו נקחים אותו הביתה. קדימה, אבישי. אני דרסתי אותו, הוא מת. אתה דרסת אותו? לא, מה פתאום? איך קוראים לך? באסם. איך? באסם.
באופניים החשמליים עברת על הטיפשות.
תגידי בבקשה.
תראי, הוא דרסת בי את טישט.
מה פתאום? זה שטויות, זה שום דבר. בבוקר הוא כבר יקום כמו חדש. יש רופאה שוב, סליחה, איזה רופאה? סליחה. רופאה טובה מאוד. לא, אני מתכוון אונטולוגית, אונקולוגית, איזה רופאה? בבקשה. יש אישו? כן. אני לא יודע. נראה שצריך להזמין אמבולנס, וגם משטרה לדבר על תאונה. הוא לא נושם, יעני, מה?
בסדר, אבל אתה לא מפחד
שמה?
אתה יודע.
שמה שנהגת על המדרכה?
שחשבו שלא פיגוע דריסה.
מה פתאום פיגוע? אתם אמרתם לי ללכת ואני נשארתי. אני זה שרוצה איזה מין אמבולנס, מה פיגוע?
אני רק מקווה שהמשטרה גם תראה את זה ככה.
אני לא דואג, תדע לך, המשטרה מתייחסת אחלה למיעוטים.
אבל אתם תגידו להם שזה לא פיגוע.
בטח שנגיד, מה זאת אומרת? נספיק נגיד, מה? אתה הרי חוקי, נכון?
אני עושה תואר שני בפילוסופיה של המדעים באוניברסיטת תל אביב.
לא, אז מה, אז בכלל, מקסימום תפסיד סמסטר, מה אתה עושה?
אבל אתם בעצמכם אומרים שלא קרה לו כלום.
בדיוק, הם יבדקו ויראו את זה בעצמם, אתה מבין? אני מאוד סומכת על הבדיקות של השב"כ.
אבישי.
וואי, מה אני אגיד לאבא שלי? מה השב"כ?
אל תדאג, לא כל כך מהר עושים פה בתים במדינה הזאת.
אבא שלי הוא נשיא בית המשפט המחוזי בחיפה, הוא עובר בדניה. טוב, אולי באמת עדיף ש...
כן.
אני אקח את החבר שלכם הביתה.
כן, נסתדר, תודה.
אתם צריכים משהו בשביל ביטוח?
הכל בסדר, תדאג לעצמך.
טוב, אם אתם צריכים משהו, הטלפון שלי זה 052.
באמת, הכל בסדר, לך כבר.
קדימה, אני מאחר,
הופה!
So, one major difference between, there are many differences and many challenges in adapting a novel into television. This was my first time doing it, and I think that one of the things that were most difficult for me was that when I started working on the adaptation, the novel was recently published in Israel. It was just published. We finished editing it. It was sitting all nice and beautiful with its nice cover in bookstores. And it was very, very difficult for me to imagine any other version of it. It seemed to me like every little thing that I omit would damage the story beyond repair. I guess that in that sense, it is easier to adapt into television a novel that you had nothing to do with its writing. But I, on the other hand, I spent the past few years with these people. I call them people, not characters even. If I, for example, need to leave a character out, even if it's a minor character, for me this is nothing less than cold-blooded murder. But this is television, and this is not exactly the right place for sentimentalism. So the first thing that I did was try and understand which events are crucial to understanding the story. Because one of the major differences between television and literature is that when I write a novel, I have all the space in the world. I can even write 800 pages if that's what I think is best for the story. My editor will probably kill me, and so will my readers, but it is possible. The television series, on the other hand, is strictly time-framed. There are 4 episodes. It's a mini-series, each 40 minutes long, and it is up to me to manage these 40 minutes, and no one would give me an extra 5 just because I look at them with puppy eyes. So I try to understand which events are crucial to understanding the story. 2 such events are the one that we saw when a young woman appears at the deceased's doorstep, apparently pregnant. Who is she? They've never heard of her. Is it possible that the eternal bachelor got someone pregnant? What else don't they know about their dead friend? And another event is this one when the body gets run over by an e-biker. This, for example, is different in the book. In the book, the e-biker is a Jewish young man, and all this thing with a terror attack and with him being Arab, this does not exist in the book. And the reason for that, this I will not spoiler anything, but I'll just say that this is not the end of it. This gets more and more complicated. And the reason for this change is that television cannot stand quiet. Television needs things to happen, and to happen in a rather high rate, let's put it this way. And so when in a book a character can have her thoughts, have her internal world, which is my favorite part of writing, this is not possible on screen. You cannot have a character stand in the frame and think, just for 5 minutes her thoughts. These thoughts have to have some kind of an external manifestation. Something has to happen. And the fact that this guy is Arab makes it much more complicated and affects the plot in later episodes. So this is an example for one difference. Another difference is that when you write a book and when you read a book, in literature in general, there is absolute silence, right? Reading is something that you do in silence. And the only voice that exists is the internal voice of the reader reading your work. And the number of different people reading your work equals the number of different voices given to the plot and to the characters and to the dialogue. For example, I love that. I love the fact that if 10,000 people are reading Stockholm, there are 10,000 different Nillies coming to life in 10,000 different minds around the world. And they're all different. And once a novel is televised, a single voice takes over and a single face takes over. And this is the voice and the face of the actor playing the role. And this is a very overwhelming experience, because on one hand, these wonderful actors, I'm going to say something about casting in a minute, these wonderful actors are taking all their time and their effort and their experience to reading out loud the words that I wrote, but on the other hand, it never quite fits what you had in your mind. For so long, I had my own voice writing this and reading this, that as far as I'm concerned, I'm the only person who can play all the roles in the television series, and I actually did give myself a tiny role in each of the seasons. I'm a multi-millionaire donor to the Tel Aviv University. Yeah, that's my typecast. I want to say something about casting. I don't know if you know, those of you who are Israeli probably do. These are the best, the most well-known actors in Israel. These are actors that I used to watch when I was an 8-year-old child. And I think that when I met them for the first time, I had to shake off a fear that someone would notice that this was written by an 8-year-old child, and that someone should tell her to first grow up and call us later. So these are the most well-known actors in Israel. We kind of composed a dream list of actors, and we said, well, we'll send them the script, and when they say no, we'll start deteriorating until we get to God knows who. But they all said yes. And then remained the question of the dead body. Who in their right mind would agree to play the part of a dead body? And while we were debating, the director, one day he walked down the street and he met Gidi Gov, who is playing the dead body. And Gidi Gov is also a very, very famous actor and singer in Israel. And they were chatting and some small talk. And then Gidi asked the director, say, do you happen to have something that doesn't involve a lot of text? And so we said, it's your lucky day, I kind of do. And one of the things that I liked was when we were shooting and everyone was working so hard, he was the only one lying there on his back and texting checking his text messages upside down. I'm going to say, I still have 5 minutes. One last thing, and then if you have any questions, I'll gladly answer. I want to say something about money. Everyone now is mourning the terrible condition of the book market, right? No one is reading anymore. They're all watching television. All the money is in television, and that's why everyone wants to be in television. All this talk. And of course, there's something about it. It's not entirely wrong. But ironically, I feel that it is when I write a novel, when I sit in my little room with my little bottle of Diet Coke, with that, goddamn Word document, with that paralyzing, horrifying Word document, that is when I am actually free of all limitations of money and time and geography and space. Because writing costs nothing, even if you write about the most expensive things. But in television, on the other hand, everything is super, super expensive, and there is never enough money. There is always an actor that you can't afford. There is always a location that you can't afford. When we were writing Stockholm, I wrote a birthday scene, a surprise birthday scene, which took place. It was a huge party of 400 people in a nightclub. And as we were approaching the shooting, they came to me and they said, hey, listen, would it really be a disaster if instead of 400 people, it would be 4 people? And they have this, they try and make it sound like a genius idea. It would be 4 people, and instead of a nightclub, it would be like in a kitchen, it would be like an intimate dinner party. And you want to tell them, well, no, it's not going to be a disaster, but we're not here to prevent disaster, right? It's not an emergency room. We're supposed to be doing art. And this is something, and it is always up to the writer to make the adjustments and to make the money work. Any questions? Yes?
So you talked about, sorry, I think I need to speak to Mike. I can shout.
I can hear you.
Yeah, but they want the recording. Okay, so you said that you wrote your characters in a separate file. Did you provide, since actors sometimes invent a story for their character before they act on it? Did you provide the actors with your character files, or did they just get to read the script and you kind of fill them in on the details?
If someone gets to read my character file, they would die, and not of natural causes. This is a super private file. This is like kind of where I get naked. You know, it's full of things. It's full of things that are badly written. It's super private. But I provided the actors with something better than the character file. I provided them with a book. They had an entire book that has many pages of the internal world of each and every character, and some of them also conducted entire conversation with me. They were interested. They had all these questions that I never thought of. For example, the actor playing Zohara, she was really occupied with the question of how does Zohara dress. She asked me, she wrote me an email, what do you think she dressed like? I think she wears this kind of a hat and this kind of a coat. And the truth is that I have no idea what my characters look like. I never do. I work so hard on shaping their inside that I never even think of their outside, only if it has something meaningful to do with their character, if it's something very extreme that I think has to do with their character. Yes.
I'd just like to start by saying thank you so much for coming out today.
Thank you.
Yeah, my first question I'd say is, where was this production shot within Israel? And also, how was the production process like shooting this series?
It was shot in Tel Aviv, in Israel, in Tel Aviv, in several different locations. The deceased's house is in a neighborhood in the north part of Tel Aviv, kind of a prestigious neighborhood. What was the process like? I can only answer on the question of what was it like for me. I was not a very necessary part of the production. I was there all the time, but I had no official capacity. They didn't need me to do anything but to, cheer or something. But I was there all the time. And this was, for me, an overwhelming experience. I remember one night that, shooting involves so many people and so much equipment and trucks and, camera people and, all these huge amounts of people and of equipment. And they had to shut down the street in order to shoot the scene with the e-biker. And I remember standing there, and there were people angry that they couldn't pass through with their cars, and a whole thing. And I remember standing there and watching it all and thinking, wow, I sat down, a few years ago. I was sitting down in my really little, I have a tiny study, a tiny room where I work. I was sitting there, thinking to myself, is it going to go like this or like that? Okay, it's going to go like this, and writing it, all amused. And suddenly there are so many people that are taking this so seriously. I felt like I should let them know that, I don't know if they should take it that seriously. I was only like playing around. But it's a very, very powerful experience. And also because these are super famous and well-experienced actors, they have all these wonderful stories which makes your jaw drop. And I think we are used to thinking of 70-year-old people. We're kind of not updated. We think, 70-year-old people, these are like grandparents, right? They should be home, saying thank you if a grandchild, pops by and, But this is not the case anymore. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to write this, because I felt that I never read all the older people I read about. They're, these cute, good-hearted people that, if they're lucky, they find the tail of a joint that their grandson left at the house, and they get all goofy. But where are the 70-year-old people that are my mother's friends? Where are the 70-year-old people that, cheat and divorce and take on feng shui and decide to move to India? And I don't know, where are these people? And when I talked to these actors and heard their stories, I suddenly realized that the people that are now 70, they were in their 20s, in the 60s, and in the 70s, and they did more drugs than all of me and my friends combined. They had a very interesting life. Is it okay to say that in a university? It's not educational. It's okay. Okay.
It's educational.
It's educational.
Not that the education we want to provide.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Hi, thank you, and kol hakavod. These actors are incredible, and this episode is hilarious.
Thank you.
I'll have to figure out where can I watch the show. Where is this? Is it streaming?
Well, it's we don't have an American version yet, but hopefully we're working on it. So hopefully we will have one soon.
Okay. It's on Israeli streaming services.
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
I'll look into it. I just wanted to ask. Well, first of all, I was wondering, if not you, who was the director or producer, or like who were the other big roles that were players that were a part of making this happen? And also, as a film enthusiast and somebody who hopes to spend a lot more time in Tel Aviv in the next few years of my life, if you had any recommendations about or just insight on the film creative scene in Tel Aviv.
So for the first question, it's true that many times the person who writes the script is also the director. In many ways, this is ideal, but I don't know how to direct. I have never directed. I have never studied. I have never studied in film school. The only thing I know how to do is write, and I really know my limits, and I didn't feel that I have the audacity to go there and try and direct. So we had a director. He's called Danny Sirkin. He later directed Tehran, which was kind of successful in Apple. I think it's Apple. And we worked very, very closely together. We worked as a one body. He made a lot of room for me, and I gave a lot of respect to his expertise and his knowledge. As for the film industry in Tel Aviv, this is something that we can talk about for hours, but I think that the bottom line is, and one thing that I learned over the past few years, is that at the end of the day, it's the same everywhere. First of all, it's all people, right? It's all people. People are the same everywhere. And the thing that they're all looking for is talent. Nothing can resist, nothing and no one can resist talent. If you're talented, at the end of the day, it's going to work. And I think it's the same there. It's absolutely the same. I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. This has been really wonderful. I wanted to ask you, it's kind of a I'm sure you've gotten this question many times, but it seems like there are a lot of universal themes in your work, but there's also a lot of Israeli context that shapes it. And so even those, Holocaust jokes, maybe other people would feel more uncomfortable, right, making it, or seeing a flawed Holocaust survivor and things like that. So I don't know if you could speak to kind of to what extent it's kind of a conscious kind of Israeli context that you're working with through these universal themes of flawed human beings, or to where do you think the Israeli context has shaped your work most, or something like that?
You'll be surprised to know that I didn't get this question a lot at all. At all. I think that basically I believe that I am not special enough to be, unfortunately or fortunately, I am not special enough to be the first person ever to have felt anything. And if I ever felt anything, if any thought has ever crossed my mind, no matter how horrible or embarrassing or horrifying it may be, if I write it down in my book, when people read it, they're not going to say, "Oh my God, what a horrible person." They're going to say, "Oh wow, I'm not alone. Thank God I'm not alone with my horrible thoughts." So I think that the universal part is crucial to me. I believe that this is what makes literature possible. This is what makes us able to read books from all over the world, because the human soul is exactly the same. We all have the same. We all have the same feelings and the same envies and etc. 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 It is very important for me to have my work planted in a certain culture, in a certain language, in a certain context, and not have it like this synthetic creature, floating in the air. No, I think that that it has to have some roots to it. And in my case, the roots must be Israeli roots and Hebrew roots, because this is the only culture and language that I know intimately. I know others, but not intimately. And the intimacy is crucial here. Then comes the question of how and if can you transform a book or a television series from one to tear it from the ground of a certain culture and plant it in the ground of another culture. But I think, obviously you can, otherwise we wouldn't read other. I think you can, and I think it's not tearing from the ground. It's just, it's making people from other cultures know that ground and understand it more, maybe more due to your work. I can tell you that in the Swedish and German versions of Stockholm, all this Holocaust thing does not exist. This is not something that can work in Germany, for example. No way. So there's another incident. There's an incident, there's, something that goes viral, but it's not a Holocaust thing. It's in Sweden, for example, because there's something very Israeli about their friendship. They have very, very Israeli friendship, something very intimate, something about, living close by to one another. There's something Israeli about it. In Sweden, they changed it to an entire different thing, that they all met. There's this something that happened in Stockholm in the 60s, where there was some protest against tearing down a tree. This is something that actually happened, and there were like student protests, and it was a whole big deal. And in Sweden, they met on that tree while protecting that tree. It was something very super Swedish. In Sweden, by the way, it's not called Stockholm. In Sweden, it's called Anklingen, which is finally, which is what they call when the committee, the Nobel Committee, finishes and and makes the decision, and there's the decision. Then they call finally Anklingen. So that's the name in Swedish. Yes.
So in the novel, there's a funny scene where they're talking about other corpse movies, but maybe novels could be brought up too. So they bring up Big Chill, they bring up Ned Devine. I thought of Trouble with Harry, the Hitchcock, Weekend at Bernie's. What are your favorite corpse novels and films? Like, because this is a genre, hiding the dead body or a handshake with the corpse, Young Frankenstein. A million places. It's there's a kind of Curb Your Enthusiasm, a corpse novel to this one. So while we have you here, what are your favorites? I know you've thought about it. It's percolating through the little conversations.
I'm going to disappoint you. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
And I don't like any corpse movies at all. The only one that I like, and I don't know if it's considered a corpse.
I just made it up. Who knows? If it's
But it's the Big Chill.
Yeah.
The Big Chill is the one. No, not the Big Chill is with the friends of Alex.
Right, but it's like
that's the one.
It's based on the return of Secaucus 7, which is a John Sayles movie. It's about and similar to what the Swedes did.
Yeah.
60s radicals who did something.
Yeah.
And now.
And I don't like slapstick at all. So all this, for example, Weekend at the Bernie's, when there's actually like kind of a doll, walking around there. This is not for me. But I do like death. It's a very strange thing to say. I like death as a theme, as a theme to write about. This is what I like. I don't like the dead body itself. I like the death as something that makes the story tick. This is what I like. I like death as something that makes you reflect on life, obviously. And so what I'm interested is not the physicality of the thing, although it's funny to say because I wrote something that is super physical. But this is not typical of me at all. I like the essence of it. I like the internal part of it rather than the physical aspect of that. And I hope that here, if you read the novel, you know that I think that eventually the premise is very outrageous or grotesque, but the novel itself is super realistic, I think. But maybe we can argue about that.
It kind of reminded me of, I kept thinking, instead of As I Lie Dead Dying, it's As I Lie Dead. And that in As I Lie Dying, the Faulkner novel, you have the building of the coffin. That's the marking of the time. And then you just use the decomposition of the body as that marking of the time. And of course, that becomes the vehicle for all the people to talk about their resentments. And there's a lot more. I think that this version of it is softer than the novel. People are harder on each other in the book.
It's difficult for me to say, but I think you should first watch the entire 4.
Oh, does it get worse?
It always gets worse, everything gets worse, so it gets worse.
Who was your, you had the person who co-wrote the first episode with you, then he's just consulted on the second episode?
No one wrote any episode with me. I had an editor, a script editor that worked with me and still works with me. I'm now adapting another novel of mine into television. So she was holding my hand because I've never written anything for television before. So I'm writing by myself, but she's holding my hand. That's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we'll, thank you, we'll end it
Thank
there.
you. Thank you for listening and thank you for coming. Thank you.